Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. My name is Kelly Johnson. I serve as the Chief of Staff for the City of Greeley. So on behalf of the city and the Greeley Police Department, we want to thank you for coming here tonight for a really important conversation about community safety. Before we begin, I want to say that this is an important conversation for our community. I'm grateful that you all chose to take time to come here tonight and hear from our police chief, Adam Turk. Before we begin, I just want to share a little bit that we all recognize that we had some pretty tragic events occur in our community about 2 weeks ago, and I think we join in sending our thoughts and prayers to that family and the victim's family, and just recognizing that that rattled our community. Tonight is a conversation about public safety in general. Chief Turk's going to step up here in just a minute, and he's going to share some information about safety in our community, safety data for Greeley, the state, and nationally, and where we are, trends that the Greeley Police Department is seeing. And what we want to say is that following his comments, we'll open this up for your questions. However, that being said, tonight is not about one situation. It's not about the most recent crime that happened in our community that we recognize was just very tragic, but tonight is about addressing questions about community safety. So we hope that out of respect for everyone that we can keep it at that level, but we will certainly welcome your questions. So when we get to that portion, we'll make sure that you receive the mic so that you can ask your questions so we can capture that on our video recording this evening. With that, thank you again for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Chief Turk.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Kelly. Good evening, everyone. My name's Adam Turk. I'm the police chief for the Greeley Police Department. Okay, I'm going to start again. Is that better? I thought it was going to be loud enough, but apparently it's a bigger room than I anticipated. Good evening, everyone. My name's Adam Turk. I'm the police chief for the Greeley Police Department. I've been the police chief for the past 3 months, appointed by the city manager. Prior to that, I was the interim police chief for about 9 months before that. So I've been serving in this role for right about a year. And prior to that, I was an officer and have been with the Greeley Police Department for about 23 years. My family and I live in Greeley, and I've lived in Greeley for about 29 years. So I'm very familiar with this community, what it stands for, and what's important to it. This is a conversation, and I'm going to start off with, during times of tragedy, we need to unite, and we need to unite as a community. And a little over 2 weeks ago, about 2.5 weeks ago, we had the worst crime that I've seen in my 25-year career. It was absolutely terrible. Our prayers and thoughts are with the victim and her family. And as we move forward with the conversation tonight, I want to be able to respect the due process, the integrity of the investigation. So I really don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that specific case. I'll be happy to talk about anything, but I think we need to let due process and the integrity of the investigation take the forefront of that incident. Just a couple comments on that. As I mentioned, it's the worst thing I've seen in my 25-year career. The randomness of it was terrible. We're not used to seeing that type of crime, number one, but number two, how random it was, which leaves a lot of questions that won't be answered for some time. So most of our violent crime and our crime in totality, when it's amongst between people, 85% of those crimes come to us with a named suspect, which tells you a lot of them aren't random. Within a couple weeks of investigating violent crime, we typically identify a suspect in another 10 to 12% of those cases. So now we're up to about 97, 98%. So random, it really isn't something that the police department deals with that often. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. The plan for tonight, this is a conversation. This isn't me sitting up here lecturing. We exist for our community. We can't exist without the cooperation and the input and conversations with our community. The police are the community, and the community are the police. I recognize that. I know that. And I know that we don't have all the answers without listening to our community. So it means a lot to me that you're here tonight. This is our third conversation that we've had. I feel real good about them. And the conversation doesn't need to stop just with tonight. I hope it continues and it's ongoing. We have a really good messaging forum from the police department and the city of Greeley for you to get in touch with the police department or other city entities so that we can answer questions if they're not answered here tonight. The first thing I want to do before I get into some of the statistical information I want to provide is introduce the staff we have here tonight. Raymond Lee is our city manager for the city of Greeley. He's in the back of the room. Deputy Chief Mike Zeller is seated in the front here in uniform. Mike is a deputy chief at the Greeley Police Department, and he oversees all of the operations of the police department. And the best way I can explain that is our police department is divided up into two divisions, operations and services. Operations is everyone that wears a uniform as their daily job. So the patrol officers, the traffic officers, the school resource officers, our neighborhood action team, our special enforcement team, all falls under operations, which is under Deputy Chief Mike Zeller. And then Kent Keller is over there on the side. Kent is our public information officer and our social media officer. So he is responsible for all the posts that you see on our social media. I'm very proud of Kent. I'm very proud of the city of Greeley and the Greeley Police Department with how proactive and transparent we are with communications. We have very few secrets at the police department. We like to get information out to the community as quick as we can. And a lot of that falls under Kent Keller's purview. So thank you, Kent. Kent is also here tonight to take some notes. If there is a question that we can't answer for you, we will get back to you, whether that's by phone or by email. We will figure out a way to communicate back some answers to you. Kent has a sign-up sheet over there where you can leave your name and or an email and phone number. The name's optional. So if there's a question that we have tonight and we take some notes and we need to get back to you, we will figure out a forum on how we're going to respond on that. So if you wouldn't mind at the end or at some point going up and leaving some information so that we can get back to you on any questions. So when you have a tragedy like this, like the city had two weeks ago, a lot of thoughts come out, a lot of emotions. And tonight I want to spend about the first 20 minutes providing an overview on crime in not just Greeley, but in Colorado and trends that we're seeing across the nation. After the 20 minutes, I want to open it up to a question and answer so that you can ask questions of the police department. And we will provide as thorough of a response that we can. And like I said, if we can't get the answer to you, we will make sure that we get back to you in some manner. After I talk about some of the statistics, Deputy Chief Zeller is going to talk about some of the strategies that we're using to combat the increase in our Part 1 crimes. Our Part 1 crimes, this is how we measure crime in Greeley, and this is how it's measured across the country. But Part 1 crimes include murder, sexual assault, aggravated assault, robbery, arson, burglary, theft, and auto theft. So those group of crimes we report quarterly and annually, and then it's used to compare us to other benchmark cities like Greeley, comparison cities in Colorado, and then across the country. In 2020, we saw our first larger increase in Part 1 crimes, and that was about 7% from 2019. In 2020, we saw a 14% increase in our Part 1 crimes from 2020. So in 2021, we saw a 14% increase over the 7% increase in 2020. And the two biggest categories that led to that increase are aggravated assault and motor vehicle theft. And this is a trend that we're seeing across Colorado and the country. And this is going to be your public safety announcement for the night, because we could really use the public's help, and we do a lot of education on this. Please lock your car, and please take your keys out of your car, because these crimes of opportunity, we can help play our part as citizens by taking some extra steps to prevent the crime of opportunity. So where we're at with our rates right now, as high as they are over the last 2 years, we're still below our high levels of 2013 and 2014. We take this very seriously as we watch these trends. We're concerned about it. The Greeley Police Department is responsible for public safety and doing something about it. Historically, the Greeley Police Department has done a really good job of focusing on the people who are responsible for committing a majority of the crime in Greeley. Those are repeat offenders, the people that enhance and make a living on criminal activity. And we have done a really good job of focusing on people. Over the last several years, and I'm going to pass this to Deputy Chief Zeller, we've implemented a strategy to also, in addition to the people, focusing on certain areas where we're seeing the biggest increases in these Part 1 crimes. So Deputy Chief Zeller, if you'd like to talk. The strategy that we use is called DDAX, Data-Driven Analysis and Approaches to Crime and Traffic Safety.
So what DDAX is, basically, if you take your crime data and your crash data and overlap those on a map, the areas where those intersect are where we want to focus our resources. So we've been doing this since 2015. As the chief talked about, when Part 1 crime started increasing in 2020, we reevaluated that strategy. So beginning in January of this year, we kind of started a new operational period. Before we start the operation phase of this, we do stakeholder engagement. So last fall into last winter, we spent a lot of time contacting residents and businesses in these areas that we're focused on. And then beginning in January, we started operations. And what operations basically are high visibility contacts by the police. So the area that we've identified is kind of the south central part of the city. So down by the Greeley Mall, towards 17th Avenue, the Walmart there, and then the hotels along 29th Street. And again, there are other parts of the city that have, more crime and traffic crashes. But based on the data that we've looked at, that's where we're going to get the most return on our investment. Someone asked us in the last forum, that doesn't mean we're ignoring the rest of the city. The city's divided up into 4 sectors. We always have several officers in each sector 24/7. This is just in addition to an additional focus to try and have an impact on that area. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So just to expand a little bit on what the Deputy Chief said, just when we focus resources with all of our department in these areas, that does not mean that we're neglecting other areas, because we also have responsibilities to serve a city of 110,000 people, and it's a large city, and we're continuing to grow. So I'm going to provide some statistical information about where we stand as a state, and this is not to intimidate. These are just facts, and then I'll provide some data behind that. So property crime in Colorado, and the most data we have to compare ourselves to other states in the country is from 2020. But Colorado was ranked number 48 in the country in property crime per capita compared to the rest of the country. Only 2 states were worse off than Colorado, and that was Louisiana and New Mexico. Concerning trend. Violent crime between 2019 and 2021 rose 22%, and the violent crime in these statistics include homicides, aggravated assault, and sexual assault, and that's for all of Colorado. For motor vehicle theft, for auto theft, we are the worst state in the nation. We are ranked number 50 in the country for motor vehicle theft. For total crime in 2020, Colorado was ranked number 47th in the country, so that's a congregate and aggregate of both property and violent crime. So, symptoms, opinions, there's a lot that goes into it. There's COVID, there's mental health, there's legislation, and I will say this, that it is a difficult time right now to be a police officer anywhere in the country in 2022. And I could not be more proud of the men and women that serve the city of Greeley and the citizens of Greeley on a daily basis. I'm proud to be their chief, and I'm proud of them because it's a difficult job to do. But I know that they're completely invested in protecting the citizens of Greeley, and a lot of them have been doing it for a long time. So know that and take that with you tonight as you leave here. So I now want to kind of transition and segue into some of the comments and questions that we got most recently over the past few weeks in response to not just the homicide, but some other high-profile violent crime that's occurred in Greeley. Concealed weapon carry laws. So it is legal to open carry a handgun in Colorado as long as you do not have a conviction or a crime prohibiting you from doing that. It is legal for you in Colorado to open carry a handgun to protect yourself in the public, or in the public on the roadway, or in or outside your house. The reason you don't see a lot of it is because a couple reasons. Businesses have the right to refuse service as a private business, and then it also raises alarm. So when people open carry, they're likely to contact the police, which necessitates a response from us. But open carry is legal, as long as you don't have a conviction prohibiting you from possessing a weapon. Concealed carry are permits that are issued by your local county sheriff. So if you want to obtain a concealed carry weapon, that is something you apply through a background check. You take a class, familiarization with the weapon, registration of the weapon, and then you're issued a permit by your local sheriff. That doesn't have to do with any of the municipal police departments. But that was one of the questions that we got consistently through our social media and through emails and web tips, was about the concealed carry weapon laws in Colorado. And you can obtain much more information about that through the State of Colorado website. General safety tips. Over the past several years, we've come up with pamphlets, brochures, and general tips that you can use to protect your property or your business. We have a stack of them up there. You're free to grab one before you go. But these are tips that you can use to better protect yourself, your property, and it has to do with fencing and lighting and locking your car, those things that are important to help prevent being a victim of a crime. So that information's up there. For those that have employees or just for our citizens, we know that we need your help. We can't have eyes and ears all over the community. So we know that we need the community. When they see something suspicious or something that isn't right, it probably is not. So we need your help so that you can call us and we can get a response going so we can make contacts. If people are making you uncomfortable, I'm going to give the same advice that we give our officers in terms of de-escalation and how to remove yourself from a situation before it comes out of control or unsafe. In terms of putting time, space, and distance between you and a problem. Lock your doors, lock your car, but remove yourself from a situation that you may not feel comfortable with. Homelessness. So in the last data that I've seen, Colorado, between 2007 and 2021, Colorado saw an increase of 266% in our homeless population. This is the largest increase of any state in the country, and that includes the warmer climates of Nevada and Arizona. The data, there really isn't good empirical data, but I think from the studies that we've read and seen, I think a good percentage of our homeless population is about 40 to 50% suffer from some sort of alcohol or drug dependency. And then the last count that we saw, Colorado has approximately 9,800 homeless people living throughout the state. So we are not immune to the homeless population in Greeley. We have homeless population just like every other city in Colorado. And I'm going to say this, but we are not going to arrest our way out of homelessness. Public safety exists. We are part of the solution. You cannot commit a crime, whether you're homeless or anyone else. So we know that public safety exists to protect and to enforce the criminal element. But the police are only one part of the solution, and it is going to take our entire community to come together to solve homelessness and to address it. From the Greeley Police Department standpoint, I can tell you that we are leaders in the country and in the state in terms of how we've addressed mental health issues with the people that we serve. One of the goals, police departments are real good. We're real good at responding to calls for service, fixing, and then moving on. We don't do real well with follow-up if it's not an investigation. We've embedded co-responders and a Squad 1 program, a community paramedic out of the fire department for several years in a grant in conjunction with North Range Behavioral Health in an attempt to reduce the number of times that people call or rely on the police and fire department for services. So the co-responders are available as a resource to the police department and the city because a call to the police may not necessitate a police response. We may not need to send a police officer to that call. Or we can bring a co-responder with us so that once the scene is safe or the situation is safe, we can introduce the co-responder, and they are really good at doing the follow-up work in terms of services that are provided to the citizen to try to prevent some of those repetitive and follow-up calls to the police department and the fire department. I'm a big fan of the model that we're utilizing. I think it helps, but it doesn't fix violent crime in itself. I mean, it's a contributing factor, but it's not the only solution. So that's just something that I believe the Greeley Police Department has been a leader in the country in terms of trying to address calls for service that may not need a police officer. So that is the overall presentation that I have for tonight. I'd now like to open it up to a question and answer phase, and I'd like to hear from you during this community conversation. So who would like to go first?
Thank you. My wife and I are 5-year residents of Greeley. Love this community. Think it has great potential. We thank you all for coming out tonight and being part of this, taking your time out of your evening. Man, listening to those stats, it seems like Colorado's leading in all the wrong areas, which is concerning to, I'm sure, everybody. But as horrendous as that crime was a couple of weeks ago, when I look at this, apparently it wasn't shocking enough. I don't know what your other forums like this, the turnout has been, but as a citizen of this community, this is concerning to me, and it's got to be frustrating for you guys. So with all that said, my question, it's kind of a two-part question. I know what I'm aware of the staffing restrictions within the Weld County Sheriff's Department is, so I'm just curious, are you facing something similar? Because and I feel it's because of the political climate in the state and the disparaging of officers. So my second part is, what kind of support do you guys get from the district attorney's office in regards to making arrests and prosecutions and that kind of thing? I think the two are tied together. I assume it is.
Yeah, let me first address the staffing and resources. And one of the reasons why I live and work in Greeley and in Weld County is because of the support that the community shows towards law enforcement, public safety in general. That is not lost on me. We, the Greeley Police Department, is facing a challenge in recruitment and retention because it's difficult to be a police officer today. We are not an organization that can provide a remote work environment. We need people at work 24/7, working weekends, nights, and holidays. So it is incumbent upon the leadership and our training and how we recruit to figure out how we're going to target that next generation of our workforce. And local, like how do we recruit people that live and were raised in Greeley? So those workforce shortages are impacting the Greeley Police Department. We are down cops. We have a lot of cops in training. And operationally, we need to make decisions on how we're going to serve all the things that we serve. And that's why I rely on really smart people in terms of the deputy chiefs and the commanders to help make those operational decisions. I think that was the first part of your question. We have a tremendous relationship with the Weld County District Attorney's Office, led by the District Attorney Michael O'Rourke and the Assistant District Attorney Rob Miller. We've been together a long time. They prosecute. They feel strong. The criminal justice system is very intricate. It's very involved. The police are one part. The district attorney's office is one part. Public defender's office, judges, probation, parole. We have a great relationship with them. Legislation that's been passed down in Colorado has impacted how we police, the rules and guidelines in which we operate. The police department doesn't make the laws, right? We enforce them, we enact them, and then we operate within them, okay? We have input in terms of legislators and how they have these conversations through different professional organizations that we all belong in, but we don't make the laws. But they have impacts, they've had unintended consequences, I believe, on public safety in Colorado. COVID, recidivism, mental health, there's a whole slew of variables that have contributed to where we're at as a state. And I'm not here to sit here and place blame. I'm here to present information and answer to the community that I serve. But workforce, we need to work on that. That's why I'm forever grateful for the officers that we still, the men and women that serve us, because they do a difficult job today with some limited abilities to take enforcement action, whether that's jail standards, through COVID. And I talk to the sheriff often. He's also frustrated. It's something we have to work within, get better, learn from, and how are we going to move forward productively? Does that answer the second part of your question, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
My name is this on? My name is Uli Limadlaw, and I have lived in Greeley for over 40 years. So I have seen changes that most people probably have not seen, some have. First of all, I want to thank Ken for his social media posts. If you are not on Facebook and have signed up for the Greeley Police Department website, he is hilarious. You've got to see what he writes. He deserves a big, big bravo. So now I know who you are, and I'm going to tag you one day. And I also want to thank the police department. I have called you many, many, many times over the years. I used to have my neighborhood registered. I don't anymore because people have moved away and I can't really do it anymore. Half of them don't speak English, so I can't do that. But my biggest thing in this city is now the traffic, the tailgating, the running of red lights, and the speeding. And I'm to the point where I don't even want to go during the day anymore. And I know I'm older, and so I'm probably a little slower, but I'm still working too. I don't know what can be done. I know you can't be everywhere, like Eaton Police. I see maybe one person a day through Eaton speeding. Everybody through Eaton knows you don't speed because the cops are everywhere. But we can't do that in Greeley. We have too many roads. I have a business on 9th Street. I don't even get out of my driveway safely sometimes because people park way too close. There's a barber shop that has not enough parking spaces, so they're using real close to my driveway. I can't get out safely. So traffic, to me, is the biggest issue in this town. And when you say remove yourself from a situation that isn't safe, how do I get out of tailgating? Anyway.
Slow down.
I do, and then I'm worried they're going to hit me.
Pull over and let the person pass,
I do
right?
that many times. I mean, I do that too often.
Yeah. So I talk about this with the city manager often because I get just as many complaints about traffic issues than I do anything else. And we are a growing city. I believe that the city of Greeley is doing a tremendous job to try to address infrastructure, because it's not all about citations, enforcement, and education. There's also an infrastructure aspect that we need to be aware of as we grow and we have increased traffic. We have a traffic unit that's dedicated to impact enforcement, to impact and lower traffic accidents, the aggressive driving, the texting while driving, and I'm very proud of them. But it's one other thing that we need to focus on as a department that impacts public safety. So I would encourage you, we have ways to communicate with the police department on our website. If it's something specific or an area that we can address or look at or pass that information on to our traffic unit, we will do that and work on that along with other areas that are causing us problems. Thank you for that information, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, one thing, ma'am, before you start your question, to get back to yours about the turnout. We've learned through all the classes we've taken about communicating with the public in our community that not everyone likes to either read it in the newspaper or be in a public forum like this. We know that social media on how we're communicating and interacting with different generations, which is why we created a position specifically to deal with the different media platforms on how to communicate with our community. Again, why I'm proud of it. But I hear what you're saying about that. I hope that we're taking additional steps to communicate with the people that don't feel comfortable either showing up to a conversation like this or get their information or news from a different source. Sure. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to try to condense this as much as possible, but we have a house. I got notes for you.
Hold the mic up.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
So I live over in Rolling Hills, and about a year ago we had a house catch on fire. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And it has since turned into a meth house. We have lots of homeless people living there. They can't be inside because they have a stop work order on it, so they're living in a pop-up camper on the street. My husband's called the police. I've called the police. We've talked to I don't know how many officers. 2 weeks ago we had probably 6 or 7 officers up there, and they all kind of piled out of every vehicle that was up there. And they took some people away, wrote some tickets, but it's a problem. And like tonight, one of your officers was up there and he left me his card and there's a vehicle that you guys are looking for. It's been up there every day and I've tried to call, I can't get through. There's so many different push this for this and that, and I'm like, I don't know what to push. I can't get anyone. I spent an hour tonight trying to call.
Okay.
And I ended up sending him an email. But the most help, and then my husband has called and has talked to one of your sergeants and a detective, and all we're getting is procedures. So we're not getting much help. We don't know where to go.
Okay.
And the most help we've gotten is from one of your guys in Public Works. I sent him an email. I've sent him I don't know how many stolen vehicle license plates, or ones that don't have license plates. They don't have windows in their car. There's people living in them. I just take pictures and send them off to him, and then they come and haul them away. But I'm just like, we don't know where to go.
Okay. Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah.
So I have
That's a minimal.
I have a response for you. So we have. Was that the end of your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a unit designated to deal with these nuisance mediation issues that may not involve just one thing, like narcotics or traffic or stolen vehicle. Public Works and our parking enforcement does a really good job in terms of responsiveness. But I'm going to have you head over there so that we can get your information and have someone from our neighborhood action team do some follow-up so we can figure out some root cause issues on how we're going to deal with this. Because from what I'm hearing from you, and I don't know the exact house you're talking about, but it sounds like we may have a mixture of code violations and criminal activity and quality of life issues that rather than one-offing and just sending one person every time you need to call, we can do that. So if you wouldn't mind giving your information to Ken Keller over there, I'll start with that. As far as the dispatch, the phone tree, I've consistently heard this in these conversations, and we've already taken steps with dispatch to have them redo it because we did a test last week, and I think it took us like 90 seconds to actually get to, if you need to report a non-emergency crime and speak to a dispatcher, they've had the conversation with us, they're reworking the phone tree, because that is a frustration that I've heard consistently now, and I appreciate Well County working on that. So yes, working on that part. The neighborhood, the mediation, and getting to the root cause, we can do some follow-up on that. So can you get that information?
We just have people up there. It starts about midnight and it's all night long. We have random cars up the street. Half of them don't have license plates. My husband and I'll just sit out on the step and watch them. They just are in and out, in and out, in and out. My son went up there by there it's been since a year ago, and they offered my son a gun. So this is a real problem for us.
Yeah.
Agreed. I absolutely agree with you. Would you mind doing that so we can get you into contact with some better resources to deal with the actual problem and the root cause? Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that.
First of all, I want to say thank you to this lady. I've lived near a drug house, and I know it's not easy, but thank you for all that you're doing. Bug the crap out of their office. You know, that's,
I'm their worst nightmare.
no,
I'm sure.
you're not. And as a citizen here, I thank you for that. I don't have that in my area, but I know that it's just a matter of time or whatever, few changes, and it could be in my area. The lady with the traffic, I understand that, but I come from Phoenix area, so this is awesome. We've been here 3 years, and we have just died and gone to heaven. And I thank you. I've seen your officers out there. I've seen them working, and I don't really have any complaints, but I know that we have problems. Homelessness, drug addiction, mental health issues. How can we as community members help you?
That's a great question, and I've heard that at each conversation because as I know this is a supportive community and we're a very giving community. One of the unintended consequences of us being such a giving community is we are helping people, and I know people, close friends of mine, who are just as guilty of handing a $20 bill out the window. That does not help the problem. It does not help us. And I have actually seen some of the people soliciting money walk around the corner when they're done with their day and get into a nicer car than I have.
I wondered if that was happening.
So we've written editorials and opinion pieces in the past asking, we need to come together with a unified solution, but we're also very giving. So I know I can ask all day long for people to stop handing out money, but it's not going to stop. People are still going to do it because we're very giving. So getting these unified approaches, and I think the city of Greeley and the leadership team is working to try to find resources to deal with individual problems, because Phoenix, I mean, obviously Phoenix, the grass is greener, not all the time, but when you move, you kind of see what you've come from and what you have. But as we grow as a city, we are going to be facing these bigger city challenges. Public safety wise, quality of life wise, I understand that. Thank you for your comments.
I just had a question. You said we're talking about how bad the state of Colorado is. How does Greeley relate to the percentage of the crimes and problems that we have? Can we have some positive feedback from
Yes.
Greeley? We're making good.
Let's also recognize that we're focusing on the glass half empty here. There are a lot of great things happening in Colorado, other than the crime. But our levels, and I don't want to call out individual cities. You can find the data if you want to. Every cities have different problems, whether it's motor vehicle theft or certain violent crime. But the rates I give you are consistent across Colorado. And Greeley is, as the 10th largest city, we're not immune to those same problems. So yes, they're up in Greeley just as they are across the state of Colorado. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just was wondering, is the percentage is that much higher, or are we kind of just slightly increasing, or?
So it kind of depends on all those crimes that I listed in the Part 1 crimes. There's some that were higher than others. There's some that were low in others, like we're really low in arson. We're really high in motor vehicle theft. We're lower in robbery, but we're higher in aggravated assault. So it kind of depends on which one of those Part 1s you're talking about. So I kind of gave you an overall increase of Part 1 crimes. Some are up and some are lower. And the two biggest, the two crimes that have increased our percentages the most are the aggravated assaults and the motor vehicle theft.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Marie Flores, and my husband and I just opened up a store about 4 months ago downtown Greeley, and so the tragedy that happened was a huge impact to our community, but also to small business owners and especially women-owned businesses, which is Mom's Popcorn, Rebecca, and you know, a few other that are on our block. But my question is, our store doesn't have a landline. So if I was to call 911 from my cell phone, how long would it take for someone to find my location? So, you know, because my kids have called 911 before, and, you know, police has followed up with a return phone call, or someone has come to, you know, for a well check. But what is the process as far as the system that's set up for if a phone call was to come from a cell phone? How long would it take for our location to be identified? Because we also have small children, and so they know how to use our cell phones. So I guess that's my concern, is like, well, do we now need to implement landlines, which is an additional cost, and all those things? So those things that seem minimal are actually pretty impactful to a small business.
And they add up to the small business, right? The more, and let me just be perfectly clear. I'm not going to tell you how to run your business. I don't think that's my role as the police chief. It's to provide public safety advice, tips. But I can speak to your question. The technology is our friend when it comes to calling 911, and it happens a lot. Traffic accidents, people not sure where they're at. We have protocols in place to where we, in case someone accidentally called, where we do attempt a call back, but we get what's called phase 2 coordinates from your phone. Sometimes, and I've seen it get a lot better over the years, where it give us this wide range. Now we have it narrowed down pretty good. So we know that we're at least starting to send resources to a specific area and it happens pretty quickly if you're calling 911. And our response times have remained pretty consistent. And good. I'm proud of our response times to our priority 1 and 2 calls. And just to give some further explanation about that, all of our calls are divided up into 5 categories, priority 1 down to priority 5. We focus our attention on our response times to 1s and 2s, which are those in-progress calls that we're typically sending 2 officers to, where there's a threat to personal safety or property. And then 911 hang up, we would get those coordinates as best we can, or keep working to narrow those in through the cell phone company. Deputy Chief Zeller, did I answer that good? I mean, I know they can do some follow-up with the cell phone company if there's problems with geography, but the dispatch center does a really good job of narrowing down those locations.
Yeah, my only other advice would be to give the name of your business, give as much info as you can. Obviously, the officers working that area would be familiar with your business, so as much info as you can provide would help us.
That was going to be another question that I just thought of when you said that, is with the response time, you know, or with the coordinates relay that we're a business, and so then it would, or not really a business, but our location, I guess, that it possibly could be a business, because, you know, I know that, you know, just thinking of the worst case scenario, that if I got the ability to call 911, but then my phone was broken or taken or something, and I wasn't able to answer, give any information, would the coordinates show a location that it was possibly a business, instead of just like, you know, I guess every 911 call is...
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So let's just talk about the downtown and the business. Our officers that work that area are familiar enough to, when they get dispatched to, let's just say, the 800 block of 9th Street, we know there's businesses there. There's also apartments and residences up top, so you don't want to assume anything, but we would be working to narrow down that information in terms of where, while we're on our way working with the dispatch center. It's a good question. Be there in just a second.
Yeah,
Or a
I just have a question about, we keep hearing about fentanyl. Is there any way that you can just address a little bit about how bad it is in Greeley? Is it as bad as what we keep hearing everywhere on the news?
Yes, it's bad. It only takes a very small dose of fentanyl to be deadly, not just on people, but also a danger to family members or even our officers. So we have a lot of precautions in place, but it is an epidemic. The overdoses in terms of fentanyl, what we're seeing come up here, what we're seeing in our community in terms of the number of overdose deaths. And our drug task force works to interdict and confiscate the larger quantities of that. We had a really good case this week that we'll be putting out some information on. But we know, just like every other community in the nation, that we are facing a fentanyl problem and opioids.
Hello.
Hi.
Good. Sorry, I was thinking too much. I want to share some concerns that I have since I'm living here. So I have 10 years on Greeley. So one of my concerns is while I'm involved on the community and all this helping people, I saw many of the community issues is related to this traffic human trafficking.
Human trafficking?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's so sad to hear that the people coming involved to these things that really hurt our society, and also not only the society but put us on risk. So one of the things that I saw on the news and of Colorado, and not only on Greeley, but is related with Greeley, is all this is happening and also coming to grow with. And it's involved, and I don't know.
You mean as we grow?
Yeah,
Okay.
and also I want to ask you, if you have news about, or do you think is involved or related with this car stealing and house stealing and this criminal with financial things that coming on your phone and some scams and asking for money for different things. And so because I think it's growing and could be related. And another one is I want to share is my concerns about the traffic and the Sept. Because today in the morning, and it's not the first time I saw it, two cars coming just fighting each other and also racing and different things that put us on risk. And I don't know, and I tried to, just telling somebody, this is happening, and it's not the first time. And I saw this happening on the roads near to the 33 Country Road, and also here on the 23rd, and it are the same cars. Mm-hmm. But I don't have time to take the note to the car or picture of the car because I'm concerned to my own safety. So that's one of the other concerns to the traffic thing, and the car and the house stole. Just
Car
because,
stolen?
in your house, not only on the street, it's almost on your house. And this is happening here on downtown very frequently. So that's my one concern, because I saw the attendance. Many of Latin community is more the victims of this car stolen. So what do you have something to educate our community and also give us this opportunity to grow on safety things? Yeah,
and thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. I tried to take some notes because there was a few things in there. We have a lot of ways that you can report. Please don't take pictures while you're driving. Like what I tell our officers, because we have radios and phones and computers, you do nobody any good if you don't get there safely, okay? If you can get a license plate, great. And then later on, we have ways that you can contact the police department without calling dispatch. On our website, www.greeleypd.com, we have a host of resources to include our annual report, our strategic plan, but also different ways to communicate with our officers and our different units to report things, whether that's drug-related, traffic-related, tips. And some of those messaging goes out to the officers that are on duty so they see it in real time. So don't take pictures. Yes, get to where you're going safely. If you can get that information, tell us where it's happening so that we can move that information to the appropriate units to try to deal with it. The stolen vehicles, and I'm learning a lot about this as by the week. Right now we're seeing an influx in Kia and Hyundai thefts, and there's a bunch of different reasons. There's I read that there was a lawsuit against the manufacturers because of some ways to bypass and steal those cars more easily than others. We need to know that because we're seeing those types of cars that are more stolen. I wouldn't specifically say that it's in any one area, because when I look at our heat maps, and stolen vehicles are of crime of opportunity, depending on where people are coming or going from, who left their car unlocked and who left the car running. It's all over. There's not one specific area. If we're seeing those areas that are hit the most often, like the deputy chief talked about, that's where we'll start diverting resources to try to address it. But the stolen vehicles as a crime of opportunity are everywhere. Send information in as you can, and there's different ways. You don't have to call it just dispatch. You can email us, and if you go to our website, there's some really good tools there on how you can communicate. Does that answer your questions? And you're happy to talk after we're done, or leave information so that we can talk offline and outside this forum too. Okay? I'm gonna let Kelly, because Kelly has the microphone. We'll get to you though.
Hello. I just wanted, I'll keep it pretty short. I wanted you to address maybe some of the shoplifting that's going on in Greeley. We've been here 23 years. I'm closely affiliated, so I have to maintain some anonymity here. But some of the crime increases that you'd cited were 9 and 14%, I think. That can't account for the shoplifting, which has increased in the multiples of hundreds of percents. And I think, I can't share details, but I know people here would be shocked to hear the thousands of dollars of merchandise that walk out of stores that I'm personally affiliated with. They're walking out by the armloads, by the cartloads. They're uncontested. These are brazen criminals. It's organized crime, and they're emboldened by no enforcement action. So, I mean, in a climate where employees are hard to retain, they're hard to. We're putting our employees at risk, and people who are starting, small business can't absorb these, big business can't absorb them. Before too long, our businesses are going to dry up. We can't hire people now, and it's unsafe. People don't want to work in business, retail, and service industry because it's unsafe now. And we've emboldened these criminals because of our inaction. And it's not on you, but I'm just curious, maybe you could speak to, you talked about robbery. I don't know what constitutes a robbery nowadays.
Theft is a part of those Part 1 crimes.
What we're doing to combat this theft, because everybody's probably seen it, but if you haven't seen someone walk out with armloads of thousands of dollars several times a day, it will rattle you.
So I agree with everything you just said. And if you saw the amount of emails that our officers pass on to other officers every day trying to identify shoplifting suspects, another epidemic, yes. And we respond, and we have really good surveillance photos, and there's repeat offenders, there's organized groups that we're trying to deal with. The threshold of misdemeanor versus felony has changed with legislation over the years. The ability to jail or to not jail has changed also, case by case. I feel your frustration. I completely agree with you. And this affects small business, big box, all across the board. Yes, I agree with you.
I lived in Fort Worth, Texas, a pretty big city. I lived in a house over here off of 30th Street Road. I couldn't afford an apartment, so I rented a room off this guy. And he was smoking heroin in the house, and he had about 30 assault weapons. And I was just sitting on the couch one night, and he had an AR-10 in front of me, and he was pointing it right at me. And I looked at him, and I said, I could tell he was high. And I said, could you please not point that at me? And when he pulled back that mechanism to engage a bullet, it went off accidentally in the house. And the bullet missed me by about this much. And I don't know, he told me one time, he says that if the police ever come to this house, he said they're gonna have to carry me out in a body bag, you know? And it was pretty scary to hear that. And, you know, he made a couple of his AR-15s automatic, fully automatics. Like he was pretty smart with guns and stuff. And it just scared me, you know, what we're up against, you know? But I think when we took God out of the schools, I think that, you know, I don't know, it's just...
Thank you for your comments. Would you mind, when we're done here and we're about to wrap up, would you mind coming over and talking to our officers over there so we can get some more details about what you're talking about? Yeah. I'd appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Okay. Like I said when we started this, the conversation just doesn't have to end. Doesn't need to end, and it shouldn't end. I encourage you, if we didn't get your questions answered tonight, there was a lot of good information that came out. Please come over and grab some resources so that we can keep talking. We'll make someone available for the police department to talk to you about these quality of life issues that are affecting all kinds of neighborhoods. It means a lot to me as your police chief to be here tonight and have these tough conversations. This is why I wanted to be the chief, but I know that I can't do it without our community's involvement also. So thank you for being here tonight, and I really appreciate that. Good night.